I'm Sarvesh, your host for the session, and Sweta is the co-host. We are gathered today on this virtual platform to welcome Mr. Venkatram Mamilapalli, the country CEO and Managing Director of Renault India Private Limited. A very good evening, sir. On behalf of the Executive PGDM batch, I welcome you. We are glad to have you today. Mr. Venkatram Mamilapalli comes with over 30 years of automotive experience and spearheads Renault's operations in India and SAARC countries. Prior to holding this role, he was the head of Renault Nissan Avtovaz in Russia. Additionally, he held several leading positions with various Indian and global OEMs, including Acer Tractors, Delphi Automotive Systems, Tata Motors, and Lamborghini India. Mr. Venkatram is an expert in supply chain management, quality, manufacturing, and logistics. He has been part of executive committees, boards, and international boards of several companies in the past. He is here today to deliver his insights on the future of Indian automotive industry, current challenges, and emerging trends for growth. Sir, thanking you again for your time. The virtual podium is all yours now.
Thank you, Sarvesh. Good evening to everyone. I'm sure that you're all safe, keeping social distances, and all the safety measures have been well taken care by each individual. So, my name is Venkatram, as Sarvesh just said, and I started my career in way back 1991, precisely 30 years, on 5th of April of 1991, precisely. And I used to work for Eicher Tractors for about 10 years. Then I joined Delphi Automotive System, worked for them for about 6 years, and then moved to Lombardini for a very short stint, and then to General Motors. I used to stay in Baroda. We had a factory in Halol in Gujarat. And from there, I went to Korea. I was heading Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Uzbekistan, as well as Israel. And from there, I came back to Tata Motors to work for Indian company and didn't stay for long, though 14 months, and then went to Renault Russia. I was there for about 5 years before I took this position in 2019 February. So that's the brief background. Out of 30 years of experience, almost 27 years in supply chain management. Basically, I was heading purchasing all across. So I've seen many suppliers, many cultures, and many other places where how the automotive industry has groomed up over a period of 30 years. And if I go back a little bit on past of 1991, the automotive industry in India was very primitive then, I would say that. And I used to work for a tractor company, which is Eicher. And even those technologies those days were not as advanced as they are today. If you go and take a farm equipment today, which is tractor, you will see a lot of gadgets inside. So there's a huge amount of transition of technology which took place from 1991 till date. And this will continue. So we all have to understand that we are in a world of environment where things change. And when I say world of environment where things are changing, it is just not automotive, but across our peripheral things, whether it is digital, whether it is lifestyle, whether it is construction, whether it is automotive or anything. So what you are learning today in your university and what you are being taught is not going to be the same 10 years, 15 years later. So you have to be agile and keep learning 24 by 7. So that's how the whole professional life would go on. So I recommend before I start off on automotive industry that be a learner until you retire. After retirement, be a learner again for yourself. So learning doesn't stop, and this is a continuous process. And if you stop learning, we stagnate. So we have to make sure that we are innovative and we are assertive in our learning techniques as well as quick learners in technology as well as the management style. When I say this management style, it is very important because in way back in 1991, the approach a corporate industry would have taken for a set of employees is entirely different than what it is today. And I'm not talking pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. It's again huge change which has happened in the last 2 years. Work from home, work from somewhere. This has become a culture too. So we don't know how the progression will happen in future. So the change is inevitable, and we all have to adapt and make sure that we catch up the speed and make sure our performances do not deteriorate because we could not catch up the speed of changes, as well as the learnings, which we are supposed to do the learnings, right? So now coming back in automotive industry, in 1984, I'm stepping back to 1984 when Maruti Suzuki then launched the car 800cc. 54,000 rupees was the launch price in 1984, and it was a compact small car, which we call A segment today. And this is the car. Prior to that was Ambassador and Fiat, or Premier Padmini, by all means. I'm sure most of you would have seen Premier Padmini and Ambassador still. And Maruti got introduced in 1984. And when the car came in, it was a completely a mechanical car. And uh, mechanical engineers used to work, and it was completely mechanical, whether it's transmission or engines or the body, everything was very, very mechanical and analog. Today, you see the same car over a period of 30 years, the generations have changed. And when I say the generations have changed, it means a lot of digital things have started coming in. And there are a few brands in India where they put internet inside. So like Intel Inside, once upon a time, now you have internet inside. And this is how the transformation is taking place. And from there, we are here today with whatever technology is available with us, right? And these technologies are expected to change. The basic automotive industry is meant for transportation. The definition of automotive industry is changing. Now people are looking at more as a transportation rather than in olden days where people used to dream of buying a car. And the number of people who used to queue up for license is far, far more than what they are today. And I see youngsters, many of them, they don't like driving anymore, and they are looking for easy way. Mobile phones have come in, and they are more busy on the mobile phones than concentrating on roads. It's hazardous, so you should never do it. But that's how the culture is also changing. So looking for future transportation system is the most important thing what we all have to look up to an automotive industry. No doubts, automotive industry will remain because transportation is necessary. And from moving from point A to point B, you can go by any means. You can go through rapid transit systems, you can go by metros, you can go by passenger, you can go by two-wheelers or whatever means it is. But the future trend 30 years from now, what I see is mostly mass transit systems. And people will move towards that. Even if they have cars, they will go for autonomous driving. India is far behind on autonomous driving per se, because the basic concept of autonomous driving is lanes. In India, we have to still find lanes properly drawn on the roads, but evolution will happen definitely. And it's not just the technology behind the construction of an automotive, it is also what is needed inside the car. It's more luxury, more a need of necessities of people. The necessities of people are also changing as the generation changes. And I'm sure that once upon a time in 1990s, nobody knows what is a mobile phone, even including me. I never knew mobile phone till 1998. When we bought the mobile phone, outgoing call is charged, incoming call is also charged. Those days it was 11 rupees for an outgoing call, 9 rupees for incoming call per minute. So this is how the cost was. And from there, we are the world's cheapest charged mobile network we have. And this has given a lot of results of becoming digital. So digital India is the future, digital world is the future. Things are being innovated day in, day out by a lot of technologists like you. And same is the way we are handling our people in an organization. Things have moved drastically. Now, the way the management style had been there, it's not there yesterday, it is not going to be the same tomorrow. And this also needs evolution, as I said. And when we go into the automotive industry, to be precise, my expectation is that we are in a transition phase, both by the government as well as the automotive industry is looking forward, that is moving from fossil fuel into something beyond that, whether it is EV or hydrogen or something else may come up. To start with, what we look up today is we are highly dependent on fossil fuel, which is gasoline and diesel. And slowly, government of India is trying to introduce ethanol. If you are familiar with ethanol, where Brazil is the predominant one, they take it out of sugarcane and make ethanol out of it as a fuel for the automotive. We are also moving in the same direction. In 2023, if I remember, or 24 beginning, you will find 20% of our gasoline will be mixed with ethanol. So that's the first step. As we are progressing towards ethanol managed fuels, we are also moving towards EVs. EVs today is still expensive for acquisition cost because of the batteries and cells which goes into the batteries. We don't have technology, we don't have mass manufacturers in India, but we are not far away. I mean, technologies are changing, it will become cheaper. The way the mobiles were, what I said, 11 rupees incoming, 9 rupees, 11 rupees outgoing, 9 rupees incoming, the battery cost also will change and it will become equal to the fossil fuel what we have today, which is way too expensive, by the way. And this transition is going on as people are trying to find optimal usage of hydrogen, optimal usage of other gases for fueling the automotive industry. We already know that CNG is predominantly prevalent, and which wasn't the case before. And we have found techniques of holding the CNG, and the large vehicles are moving towards CNG. And it's not far away that even the large vehicles will switch over to EVs with a better management. And as this change continues to happen, we also have to evolve and see our adaptivity towards the automotive industry. And two-wheelers, today we are the largest producer of the world, I would say that. And I would not see much of future for two-wheeler industry 20 years from now. So they will diminish because of various reasons. Maybe because of this pandemic, maybe because of social distancing. We don't know how long this pandemic is going to stay with us. And I already see an evolution of most of the people who have two-wheelers are graduating into four-wheelers. And this migration will continue. The four-wheeler guys will go for bigger vehicles and they will go into the mass transport system. By then, there will be some methodology of having it. We see a lot of metros in last 10 years across cities. And this will become predominant as we come back to normal life from the pandemic. When, I don't know. I'm not an astrologer. So let's wait and watch what happens a couple of years from now. But the migration is a mandatory thing for our livelihood. And when this migration is happening, employment changes. In way back in 2000, there was something called Y2K. I don't know how many people you have listened to this. We were all working, and most of my colleagues just jumped into the softwares and they started learning mainframe systems, C++, blah, 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 all the software guys. And they all moved to US, they moved to some other countries to solve the Y2K problem. And on 31st December 2000, to be very frank, nothing happened. Everything was normal. And otherwise, they said that everything is going to collapse and we will not be able to run our computers. Nothing I saw. I was in the business and I was watching it. Thanks to those Indians who went into mainframe systems and C++, they resolved it probably. And similarly, the opportunities, the job creation which Y2K bought is multi-million. And just before that, people said that computerization, automation is going to kill jobs and many people will be jobless and so on and so forth. There was a lot of paradigm. But today, that fear is gone beyond and you will find multi-million job creation which has happened because of this Y2K onwards, it's just clicked on. And every technological changes which are coming up will create jobs. So somebody having a belief system or a paradigm saying that technology improvement, we have mobile phones, we have a lot of apps, we have a lot of automation, which will create employment issues is not a true factor. And in my opinion, jobs only will multiply as the population increases. And I'm sure that by 2030, we will be close to about 10 billion global population and everybody will have employment. That's for sure as the technology changes. And these technologies changes which are bringing in also brings employment. It is not only bringing employment, but it also gives you a different level of lifestyles and which could be good. sometimes may not be, but yes, we will have changes coming up. So today we have gasoline, fossil fuel. Tomorrow we are looking for ethanol-based mixed gasoline. Then we are going to EV. Maybe we will go to hydrogen, and then we will move towards hyperloop system. Maybe it comes up, and so on. This progression will happen. When you all guys are of my age, you will think that, oh, we had a car which was running on gasoline. You will say that to your children or grandchildren. I don't know. The fact is that they will ask, what is a car? So they will not, maybe they will not even know what is a car, or they may not know that you can own a car, and we used to own a car once upon a time. Is it? So that's the change which I would see in automotive industry. 30 years from now, the whole blueprint of automotive industry will be entirely different than what it is today. And we all are getting prepared. As an automotive manufacturer myself, I have seen changes. I've seen various types of technological changes, and we are also preparing for future. In Renault, globally, we are pioneers in EV, and we are the largest seller of EVs in Europe. And we also have autonomous technology, and it's going beyond that. It is just not autonomous, but it is going to go beyond that. And slowly, there is an integration of personal mobility with drones. So we also have to be prepared where we will land up. Maybe I'm not saying that we will start using the air traffic system, but something will change in lines with the drone mixed with automotive. Not immediately though, 30, 40, 50 years, I don't know, but that's something will happen for sure. And people need speed because nobody has time, and they have to go from point A to point B at the shortest time possible, not by the distance. I'm talking by the time. So everyone will start working in this direction. That is the technology which will move. And one gentleman by name Elon Musk is working aggressively in various transportation systems. Hyperloop is one of them. And I'm sure you would have heard that one experiment is going on the lines of Hyperloop, but they are moving into a different direction. Not that developed nations will be the first ones to come out with the rapid systems or rapid transportation systems, but developing nations have the opportunity to adapt quickly. Why I'm saying this is because people, the guys who are in Finland and Sweden, the guy who invented the mobile phones, those days, there is nothing called 4G, 3G, 2G. They had a mobile phone. It was like a wireless system of communication because it is a cold country, buried in snow, and they had a huge problem with telephone lines. So the necessity was to have some wireless communication. That's how the birth of mobile phones came in, and Ericsson pioneered it. Nowadays it doesn't exist, but those days they were the pioneers in the mobile system, and that's where the whole thing started off. Today we don't have time, we don't have much of energy to wait with patience, so we need 5G, maybe 10G tomorrow. We need data transportation very fast, and it will be the similar lines even on the transportation system. May not be that fast, but yes, we will see a hell lot of a change coming up in the automotive system. Now, coming back on the structural needs of automotive system. And when I say the structural need is safety, safety is the most priority thing today, given the conditions of our lifestyle, given the conditions of the roads, given the conditions of the weathers, we all have to be safe. So automotive industry is also pioneering in going for 5-star ratings and so on and so forth. It's not just the rating which you all hear, but there's a lot of things which go on. It's not just airbags, which has 6 airbags or 8 airbags in a car. It's beyond that. It's the structural stability of the vehicle, the engineering which goes in making steel or other metals or plastics, which is behind making these safety products, has also technology. So it is flowing from automotive to the components, from components to the raw material to extraction of raw material. So the technology will have to come from bottom up and top to bottom. Demand also has to take place because the need comes in. When you're at a high speeds or you need a faster transportation system, then the whole architecture of the vehicles or anything will change, obviously. So these changes from one industry, which is moving towards a future technology, will not only stay in that industry, but it will go pan industries, whether it is a machine maker, whether it is a metal maker, whether it's a plastic maker or carbon fibers, you can name it, it changes the whole gamut of things across the system, ecosystem. And this is how the whole change will happen, which means that even our home appliances, the way we are dealing our things on a day-to-day basis with things on the table will also change. And these changes come because of these changes in the technology in one industry. And the biggest example for that is the computers. And when in 2000, adaptability of computers came in, and today we have mobile phones. And that is the derivative of those technologies into our hands. And this is how automotive industry is also going to do something. What I cannot predict today, but I'm sure that I'm looking for a great change. I hope I'll be alive to see the change, but you will definitely, all of you will see the change which is going to happen in the automotive industry. It is not just the architecture of vehicle which we will stop with, but it is also not with the fuel, but it is beyond that. And whether it is speed or your safety, which I've just narrated, whether it is fuel, it is also going to change, and something else may come up where you will carry large number of people in one shot on a capsule basis. So these changes will happen, but let's not go jump there. On a short-term basis, EV is going to be the technology to start with. And once the EV kicks in, maybe by 2013 India, it will stay for 20 years, 15 years before it evolves into a new technology. Because once you have the EV or batteries in your car, you can do many other things along with that, because you have power which is in storage in your compartment and which will be used for multiple things. Now, we are all talking from work from home. Maybe tomorrow it will be work from car. Yeah. So that can happen. And you need gadgets, you need computers, you need internet. Everything would be available in your car. And as you are moving from point A to point B, you are doing your things. Maybe you are doing your dinner, or maybe you are cooking for somebody else, or maybe you are watching a movie. Anything can happen because autonomous driving is also in place. And these changes are natural and they have to happen, and they are happening, but it is happening step by step. So this is what is automotive industry going to be. And there are other applications. When I say automotive, don't believe that it is only passenger car. Okay, there's something beyond passenger car. And whether it is farm equipment, whether it's cranes, whether it is bulldozers, or whether it's JCBs or excavators, you will see these changes coming up. And the adaptation of technology will be pretty natural across the platforms in the automotive industry. And today, if somebody wants to dig a road, you need a JCB type of excavators, which today it's manned. Tomorrow you just program it, it comes and it starts digging its depth and width exactly, precisely, and keeps going. And construction will also adapt these technologies, because again, it is automotive based. Your elevators will change. And probably in future, if you are staying in 100th floor, your car lands up in the 100th floor. You don't need an elevator, or something else might happen. And you will see this happening in few of the countries where experimental things are going around. One is the Japan. Okay, Japan is very, very innovative in such designs. And now there are many other companies who are trying to adapt, like Singapore. There are many other countries which are also looking for joining hands to develop technologies. And this is how we are also going to look for. India automotive industry is maturing much faster than the developed nations. They took almost like 80 to 100 years to come to the level where they are, but we are moving at much faster pace. Maybe in 50 years, we'll catch up the time. And it's a leapfrogging. Basically, we are going to leapfrog the technology because somewhere it is available. You have to just adapt it and then keep moving on. So this is how the whole thing. So I will not give much lecture about the whole future technology in automotive industry, because you will see it yourself. I will give more time for question answer sessions, so that I will try and answer you as many questions as possible. Before I jump to the question answer session, I'll tell you about Renault in India. Very important is that we make about 4 models in India, starting with Duster. I'm sure most of you know what is Duster, Quid, Triber, and Kiger. Kiger is a recent baby of ours, which we launched in March this year. And we continue to bring new products and innovative products. And Renault is known for innovation, and we were the first one to make MPV globally. Nobody made it in the world. We are the first ones. And we have the Triber, which is a sub 4 meter, and it is a 7-seater. Somebody should watch it, enjoy it, drive it. You will feel it. And what is important in India is there are 2 levels of taxation. One is sub 4 meter by length, 4 meters. It should be under 4 meters, and above 4 meters, which are big SUVs. So there's a tax differential. So for the affordability sake, people make sub 4 meter and bigger than 4 meter, because our country as such is very cost sensitive, and it's necessary that we give the product to every level of the society, and that's how this is structured. So that's the 4 products which we are making. It's in Chennai, in Oragadam, is a place very close to Sri Perambudur. That's our manufacturing plant. Close to about 7,000 people work. We also have a tech center in Mahindra City, very close to Oragadam again, another 7,000 engineers. And we have offices across India, where it is sales and marketing office. And our registered headquarters is in Chennai. And that's where I'm sitting and talking with you now. So that's the background of Renault in India, headquartered in France, in Paris. And we have multiple plants in multiple countries currently. And we haven't made money last year. That's an unfortunate thing, but we are sure that we are going to make money this year. So making money while making cars and more satisfying cars is very, very important for us. And that's our core business. So with that, open for questions.
Thank you, sir. As someone from automotive industry, I have to say that I got to know several new informations on the future technology trends and insights on future auto retail too. The line which you said, we used to own a personal car once is still rattling through my head. I'm sure that that will be the case for everyone out here. Now we are moving to the Q&A session, and the students will be raising their hands and will ask you questions one by one.
Sure.
People, you can unmute yourself and start asking questions one by one.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Praveen.
So I want to ask that we are expecting so much technological changes in the future in automotive industry. So what are the major challenges that we are expecting in the complete supply chain? Like how do the small ancillaries cope up with these changes?
Very good question, Praveen. The most important thing as India, we are shy on investments, okay? And everyone who wants to invest, the first question is, what will be my turnover? The difference between China and India, this is what I want to explain a little bit. The whole fundamental, the format is different. There, they invest in millions of volumes and then go grab customers. Once you put the volumes in place, there's a cost advantage. Yeah, no doubts, the government is giving a lot of subsidies in that country, and they are able to get the money from the banks of the government, and they are investing it. Once they invest, they assume that they have invested for the volume of say 10 million, and they appropriate the cost based on that full volume installed capacity. Unlike us, where we are in a different financial platforms, where the entrepreneurs or the industrialists, when they invest, they see ROI, return on investment, and accordingly they invest based on the forecasted volume. The forecast volume is again shy, and therefore our cost advantages are little less. And that's why the Chinese guys are invading the world with their cost advantage. Having said that, we have technologies. We have exactly or better technologies than the rest of the world in many cases. Especially India is known to be one of the best foundry country. Okay, and whether you take ferrous castings or aluminum castings, we export a lot. We are good at powertrain products, whether it is an engine block or camshaft or a crankshaft. We are number one. Actually, if you see the top 4 players of powertrain products. We are the world number 1. And we are no less than anybody on quality. We are no less than anybody on capacities. We are no less than anybody on the people front. Okay, but the problem is our own domestic volumes are still not rising up. Way back in 2002, I did a presentation in Delphi Automotive System where I was showing that India will be touching 3 million vehicles, 3 million in 2010. We are at 21. We are still at 3 million. So if you take a graph on x-axis and y-axis still remains the same curve, and the x-axis years are changing. So it is moving on. So our biggest disadvantage for our entrepreneurs or the supply chain management here is our volume. Despite being such a huge country with people by population, we are still not having that adaptability of getting cars into our marketplace, or we are not expecting, or we are not providing an environment, I would say, of people buying cars easily the way they were been doing it. But it is a matter of time. If you see the motorcycle industry, okay, 10 years before, there were no motorcycles much on the roads. Today, we are the world's largest producer of motorcycles, and we consume domestically. And the most important thing here is domestic consumption is the key to the success of any industry, whether it is automotive or non-automotive. But that's where we are struggling today. Number one. Number two, when I say supply chain, the supply chain are 2 types in this. One is logistics, another is beyond logistics and before logistics. Logistics is one thing which we all have to focus and make sure that a product, when it is in logistics band, it has to come in a definitive time frame so that you plan your inventories. You don't lock up your inventories or overstock or understock, both the things. So this management needs a lot of energy in our country, and for which, again, you need to have infrastructure, which is roads and buildings. I'm sure that the current government or the past government had put a lot of roads, but looks like they are not sufficient. We have to build a beautiful goods corridor, which is still lacking in India. Once we have this, the whole logistics in place, then the pre-logistics and post-logistics supply chain management will be the best one which we will ever have. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Good evening, sir. Okay, you go ahead.
Tanya, go ahead.
Yeah, hello, sir. Good evening. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us today. So my question is regarding autonomous cars. Like you said, that cars in future will be more and more technology oriented. So if you can say something more about it, mainly regarding the fact that as more and more technology comes into picture, then there are also risks like cybersecurity risks, and so there are chances of that the passengers safety gets jeopardized. So how can we get a balance? Like if we bring, suppose, artificial intelligence or technology, how can we get a balance between this and also protect ourselves from the cybersecurity risks that we are going to expose ourselves to?
Okay, I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, but I'll try and address your question as much as I can. If you see today, we are using mobile phones, okay, and you are operating mobile phone for Swiggy, Paytm, and all your banking operations, and we still are in threat. 24/7 we are on threat when we are using our mobile phones, or when you are using your credit cards, when you are using internet banking, right? So there are some gates which have been put in for making sure that there is no hacking or any type of cyber security in place. So when the product is getting evolved, let's say, for example, we have an autonomous car and somebody can just hack into the car and just switch it off, okay, on the middle of the road. It's possible. And for which we also have our own system, which we call control units. Okay, there will be 4 control units in a car. Today, as we speak, there are already 4 control units, and it will be more in the bigger technological cars. And these control units are more controlled by the manufacturers, means automotive manufacturers and their suppliers. And there are enough security systems which have been provided. In the current environment, I'm sure that in future, when we go for complete digitalization of an automotive, it is sure that they will have their own security system. And I don't think that we will have a bigger problem. Doesn't mean that we don't get smart people who can hack. Okay. If somebody can influence American election, anything can happen. So I would still say that there will be systems like people like you will develop and make sure that there are enough security systems provided to that. However, there is, in automotive industry, whenever it is digitally done or there is some automation happens, there is a manual override always. Whether it is your brakes, today the brakes which you press, once upon a time you have to literally stand on the brakes to hold your tires. Okay, I'm talking about 20 years back, because there's nothing. Then it moved to hydraulic, then it moved to pneumatic. Now it has become motor assisted, right? So you still have an override on the manual. So if something happens for your safety and security when you're on the road, there is a manual override which is being provided. Even today's technology, in future also it will be done, because that's the one which is law. By law, you need to have a manual override where you are in motion. And this is not applicable for aeroplanes, Tanya, but for cars, yes, you will have it.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. Ayush here. First of all, I'm thankful for your insightful session. My question is regarding autonomous driving. As you have already told that auto industry is going to have a total metamorphosis in a decade to come. And apart from technologies on electric vehicle, hydrogen and others, there is there is a technology on autonomous driving which companies like Volvo and JLR are working on. So how is the industry going about it? Because since I have came to a news that autonomous driving car was allowed on a pilot basis in California. So how do you see the market for autonomous market? I mean, significant market, if not in India, on a global scale. How is the automotive industry expecting a market? I mean, by when can we expect on a global scale? So second question is that
let me first finish the first question.
Okay.
The memory is less.
Okay.
First of all, autonomous driving, it's not just Volvo and somebody else. We also do.
Yeah.
And the next Paris Olympic, you will find autonomous cars made out of Renault. Okay. And what is important is you need an infrastructure, you need an ecosystem for autonomous driving. As I said, you need lanes. And today in India, we are not there. Okay. And we are far away from that. The most important thing, there's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5 autonomous driving. Level 5 is no driver and gone. Level 4 is hands off. Sorry, eyes off. Level 3 is hands off. Okay. And level 2 is basic automation, which we already have. And the level 1 is lane departing sensor. On the rear view mirrors, which you have on the car, left and right, there's a lane departing sensor.
Yes, sir.
And when there's a white lane on the road, it says, if you're moving away, it says that you are departing out of lane, stay in your lane.
Yes, sir.
First of all, we all have to learn that to drive within the lane. So that's the biggest problem we have today. And first of all, you need a lane on the road.
Yes,
so
sir.
Keep India away on the autonomous driving for next 15 years, I would say that. Now,
yes,
coming back onto the developed nations, whether it is Japan, US, Britain, Europe, all the guys, they will first adapt into the fleet management. When I say fleet management, it's taxis or any delivery like Swiggy guys, who they deliver by cars and so on. So this adaptation will happen and will happen very quickly. I would say that in maximum 5 years, you will have fleets with autonomous driving in a developed nation where there is a good amount of infrastructure available. It's an ecosystem which is required. Very simple is ecosystem. And as I said that California is one of the best ecosystem it has. Japan is the second. Japan already has autonomous driving, but they're at level 4. Okay. The driver still sits in the driving seat. They haven't moved to level 5 because they are still wanting much more than what US is okay with level 5 autonomous driving. So 5 to 10 years, you will see a large amount of adaptability on fleet as well as the delivery system on the logistics front. And what I also expect is that when it goes long distance haulage, trucks, and when I say trucks, the big ones, they will also adapt into autonomous driving, where they catch one lane going from, say, Paris to Moscow. It goes on one lane straight, and those things will be adapted faster.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So another question is little off track. I wanted to know about the cars which are launched. The same model is launched by two companies under different names. For example, like Renault Duster was launched as Nissan Terrano, and then we had one more example like Baleno was launched as Glanza by Toyota. So what is your take on this? And are we expecting any other car from Renault side to be named and launched by some other company?
You need to first of all understand that we are an alliance company. Nissan and Renault is same, and
Yes, sir.
Renault owns Nissan by almost 48%. So
Yes,
it's called shared platform. Okay,
yeah.
not just that Maruti and Toyota or Renault and Nissan are sharing the platforms. Everyone will share the platforms. There are many outside companies also do this, and
Yes,
people
sir.
don't know. Like Daimler and Renault also shared one of the powertrain project. Okay, and this sharing in automotive industry is very much necessary for bringing economy of scale. If you,
Yes, sir.
yeah, what is important is the entry ticket, the investment which is there is huge, and every car will cost you like 300-400 million dollars.
Yes, sir.
And in order to reduce this cost and bring it to the affordable developing countries, you have to. And this will continue. I mean, this is not going to stop in a day or two. It will continue. The most important thing is the top hat, which we say the car body, that will change. And nobody will use the sister body. No, they'll use the platforms, they will use the powertrains, they'll use the transmission, and that's it. Beyond that, the top hat will change. And that is a normal practice, and it will continue. And in future, I will not be very surprised that there is one platform shared by all automotive guys for EV. And I've already seen one of the company in Korea who developed one platform, one single platform, and they have sold for 6 companies. They have sold already. And it's not that only 1 or 2, it is pan world. Like this platform was sold to GM. It was also bought by Vauxhall. It was part of GM before. And then it is sold to one of the Malaysian company, and it is sold to one of the Indian company. It is also sold to one of the British company, and this goes on. So the platform is made one, and it is shared across all. And this culture will continue. And if you see, say, for example, let's take Bosch. Bosch, I hope you know the company, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Which makes starter motors, alternators once upon a time. Now they are making ECUs, engine control units, and so on and so forth. Are these not shared across all the manufacturers of automotive? One ECU which they make, whether it's Continental or Bosch, it is shared across whole industry. It's
Yes, sir.
the platform will be the same way. Tires, whether it is MRF, Goodyear, or Michelin, whoever makes it, everybody uses. It's the same tire, same size. Everything is done mass production. Only thing is the numbers change, part number changes. So in the same fashion, the platforms will also go. It is not far away, because we will not have, once we get into EV, we will not have engines, we will not have transport.
Yes.
It will be motors. One guy is making motors, because for making induction motors or other motors, you need volumes. One automotive guy cannot make these motors himself. So it will be done mass produced by one company, maybe Ayush Electrical Motors, and it supplies to the whole world. So that's normal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Good evening, sir.
Ekta, please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you so much for the valuable insights, sir. With the Renault EV maybe possibility of coming into the Indian market, how do you plan on expanding the charging infrastructure? And like for Indian market, swapping versus, the fast charging infrastructure, which is more ideal. And so second thing is, like we know that batteries account to 50 to 60% of the vehicle cost. And in India, we need more affordable cars. So can we have a alternate range extension battery system rather than going for a higher battery capacity, kWh?
I've been talking to the ministry many times, to Niti Aayog, Mr. Amitabh Kant. that we need ecosystem in India. Ecosystem here is batteries, very important, and the battery charging stations all across, like the way we have fuel pumps. Doesn't stop there, okay? For example, these lithium-ion batteries, I don't know if you know it or not, on compression, they explode. So they're very dangerous. They are bombs. And because of this attribute of these batteries, the car manufacturer builds that into the chassis. So they cannot be replaced because of its safety needs, what is required. It is on the chassis frame, the battery cells are packed up. So even on impact, nothing should happen. And they are not removable like the way it is in the motorcycle. Motorcycle is below the seat, so you can just pick it up. Oh, in the passenger car, it becomes a chassis frame. It is the bed of the car. Number one. Number two, I would not say that the technology of swappable battery will not come. There is something called technology called string cells. String cells are like eggs. It's a cell egg, which is used by Lockheed Martin today. Lockheed Martin is the defense equipment manufacturer in the US, and there are no wires. Each egg type of cells connect to each other, and they transmit the power, and they also exchange the power within them. And these eggs can be pulled out, and you can replace the other eggs. Okay, so they're called string cells. This technology is still not there anywhere else other than Lockheed Martin, who's using it at this point of time. And this will go into space first. It will go into shuttles or rockets. They'll start using it there. They are not expensive. They are actually cheaper than the lithium-ion batteries. The cost of lithium-ion, you said 50%. It is not 50%, madam. It is 100%. Like if you acquire a car for 4 lakh rupees today with a gasoline engine, the battery will cost you another 4 lakh rupees. So that's the cost we have today. Why we are at this cost is because of availability of lithium, and as well as the manufacturing of cells. And this needs capacities and volume. When you have volume and capacities, the cost will go down, the way the mobile phones are. Once upon a time, mobile phone was way too expensive. Today, you can find mobile phone for 4,000, 5,000 also, if at all you want to buy one. So it will come to that level of battery technology, and basically because of volume. Second most important thing is availability of lithium on the earth. Okay, they are limited. And the unfortunate thing is the large mines are sitting in Afghanistan in Taliban. So until somebody gets an access to that, this cost will remain like this. Who will get when? I don't know. I'm not trying for it, by the way. So we need to see how we can replace lithium. We already started replacing cobalt. Okay. Cobalt, it's available in the Central Africa, and there are a lot of global conditions of child labor and things. I'm sure you know that Congo is a place, and people have stopped using or reducing to use the cobalt content in the battery, and they are replacing with aluminum and other material. So the evolution of this batteries by material which is available easily is the solution, or we go for a different solution which is easily adaptable. And today, unfortunately, I'm not a chemist or a scientist to say what is the metal going to be of future. But yes, there is a challenge on the battery cost. Coming back on the most importantly, in India, if at all we have to adapt EVs, ecosystem is key. Ecosystem, when I say ecosystem, is when an EV car meets with an accident, the policeman and the fireman should know how to attend that accident. If he cuts somewhere by mistake, it will explode into pieces. Okay, so those type of trainings are also required in ecosystem. Ecosystem is not just the charging stations. It is the firemen, the policemen. If somebody is stuck inside the car, it's overturned, how to remove them, how safely they have to handle. This training has to be done. I'm sure you will understand what I'm saying, that training a fireman and a policeman across pan India is not going to be that simple, or otherwise they have to call specialists to do so. So these things are very much necessary to make sure that when we use an EV car, there are a lot more things go behind that. Not just an IPCL or BPCL puts up a charging station and we are done and go away. It doesn't work that way. So the Europe and US has did this adaptation extremely well, and we are a little away. I'm sure time will come because government is insisting on the EV implementation, which is called CAFC, which is emission norms. Starting 2023, the adaptation of EV will be mandatory by automotive industry, and by then we should all gear up, and we are left with 2 years, less than 2 years rather. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. Vipul here, sir.
Yes,
Sir, thank you for sir insightful sessions. My question is, in your experience, what are the pain points we as an MBA graduate should look into? What are the SCM pain point we as an MBA graduate look and try to rectify those?
If I understood the question, you're talking about supply chain management.
Yes, sir. What are the pain points in supply chain management, and where we can work, like we as an MBA grad?
Okay. Once upon a time, way back in 1990s in supply chain management, we used to talk about just in time, okay, where you don't have inventories across your value chain. You get the parts, they get manufactured, they're going out and sold. And if you see last 3-4 years, I mean, during this pandemic and pre-pandemic a little bit, the whole world is changing, okay? The demand supply is continuously changing. So now it has become somehow in time, okay? People call shit, but that is what it is. And now the whole cycle is coming back and saying that we should hold inventories. There should be safety stock. And I don't know how many people know SAP, okay? If you go into the SAP, there are levels which you maintain, inventory levels of each part. What will be your transit time? What is the manufacturing time? How much is the logistics time? What is your safety stock, and so on and so forth. This is okay in a normal situation, but a country like us, we will have extreme challenges. A guy who's carrying a crankshaft from Jalandhar to Chennai, okay, and a Sardarji is driving a truck,
Yes.
and he has to come within 72 hours. That's my supply chain management is. And suddenly I find that there is a Diwali day in between. I'm done. My life stops. This is my pain today. And this whole ecosystem has to change, and we have to adapt. It is not his mistake. It is not the driver's mistake. It is not the logistics company's mistake. It is not my mistake because I planned it like that. It is the way we have to lay our infrastructure and plan things accordingly. We got to anticipate. The biggest supply chain managers deficiency in India is anticipation, lack of anticipation. And the day you can anticipate, predict, and plan, I don't think that we will have much of a problem. And I did supply chain management for 27 years. And believe me, I used to carry parts myself in a train from Aurangabad to Hyderabad, sitting in a toilet. I did that because I could not anticipate. There were shortages, so I had to bring and feed the line at 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is how I've run. I'm talking about 1990s, okay? And the second biggest problem in the supply chain management, what we have is the whole value chain system, from the raw material to the finished goods. We need to know who is all interacting with the component. And if somebody can trace this whole value chain, you will have perfect supply chain management. The biggest problem is we know our next supplier, tier 1 supplier, there's tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. Okay, you got to trace from the raw material guy, the guy who's making steel, tier 5, until the OEM who is assembling the part. This whole value chain has to be aware and analyzed, and we should know the risk factors. I don't know how many people know FMEA. Okay, and I'm sure your MBA students, somebody should have taught you FMEAs, and this FMEA should not stop with just one supplier next to you or the next supplier. It has to go through the value chain. Once we have this whole equation, then you will solve major problems. I would not say 100%, but majorly you will solve all the problems. Today, we are running a deficit of electronic parts. You know why? Because of this pandemic. People work from home. Students are sitting at home and studying, whether it's BYJU'S or anything, started buying the electronic components, mobile phones, laptops, Wi-Fi routers, blah, blah, blah. And the chips, the wafers, which we call microchips, the wafers, capacity is constant across the world. And we are the largest consumer as an automotive industry. whether it's Bosch, Continental, Vestions, they also buy. Suddenly, when this lockdown happened, the whole world is working from home. So everybody needs internet routers, everybody needs laptops, everybody needs mobile phones. So, and they pay well. So the suppliers who are manufacturing wafers, they found that they can make quick profit and huge volumes. So they started diverting all these wafers to them. And what happened? Automotive industry is running short of parts. Had I known that whole value chain until to the wafer manufacturer who's sitting in Taiwan or in Japan or in China, I would have planned it better. Today, I'm scrambling to find out who is that supplier who is making the wafers to give it to a PCB or a processor manufacturer, and then who is sending it to other guy, before it reaches Bosch, Westion, or anybody else. And then it reaches me. And we are running on global allocation across automotive industry. It's not just Renault Nissan, it's across automotive industry is running on ration today. And there are huge amount of backlogs of deliveries of cars just because we don't have electronic components. And I would say in 1984, we had been there, it was fully mechanical, there no electronic components. In 2021, huge amount of electronic components. And I don't know if you can imagine that one car has close to about 24 motors, small motors, whether it is to flip your OSRV outside rear view mirror or to wiper system or windows up, anything you call. 24 motors going, and they are all governed by these electronic control units.
Looks like we are nearing the end of the session. Can we go ahead with one question, sir?
Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Hi, sir. Good evening. Niharika here.
Yeah, Nihari.
Sir, thank you so much for taking out time for all of us, enlightening us with all the knowledge you have. So my question is related to supply chain domain. During this COVID era, supply chain has become one of the most crucial domains today. Sir, the companies are facing huge disruptions in the supply chain, as you have answered the previous questions. Sir, I would like to know if there have been any rapid responses that companies are using to, address these supply chain disruptions, and how are they managing to develop more resilient systems?
Very good question. It's also a learning for the automotive industry, especially not just pandemic, but electronic component shortage. People are using aircrafts and chartered jets today to transport material because of emergency situation. And that's nothing new. We had been doing this for 20 years. Charters, we use extensively in automotive industry. The way the things are moving now is we are making a white paper, or you can call it a strategy, that your supplier base should be within the vicinity of your manufacturing plant. Okay. So the closer you are, better it is. And we are also insisting that our supplier should also be in the close vicinity. Suppliers also should be in the closer vicinity, which means to say, I just explained that you need to know the complete supply chain system, right from the raw material to the goods which you have to assemble. You got to know it. And that's where people are focusing. And we exactly did the same thing, but we did not learn better when tsunami happened in Japan. In tsunami, one of the place called Sendai, very close to Fukushima, I was there 45 days near Fukushima, 22 kilometers away from Fukushima, when the tsunami happened, because Hitachi plant was hit badly. And we used to buy microchips from there for our GM US plant. And we did the same thing. Okay, we thought we should do this, and do this. And we did it. What we missed is that we assume that people will still work. In this pandemic, what we learned is we don't have people to work. We have everything in place, but there are no people. Everybody are off because of COVID restrictions and blah, blah, blah. So we got to plan something different this time. So there is a white paper which is being formulated. Each experience is a learning, and you learn and you correct it, you execute it. So today, if tsunami, God forbid, should not happen, touch wood, but it happens, I will not disrupt my line. After 5 years from now, if touch wood, pandemic should not happen, if it happens, we know how to operate. So these are few things which we got to learn as we move on. We never expected, we didn't even know what is pandemic. Okay, I learned that virus looks like this. I saw it first time on the television. I never knew that how virus looks. I don't know if virus really looks, but that's what television teaches us. Yeah. So I never heard what is black fungus. We are learning. So they are all things which we learn out of television. True or false? I don't know. Mostly 99% they are false, fake, but that's what it is.
Thank you,
I
sir.
hope I answered your question.
Thank
May
you.
not- Yeah. Go on.
Thank you, sir. Actually, Tushar is excited to ask you one quick question. So if you're okay with it, we can.
Go because I have another call.
Oh.
Started. Yeah. Go on.
Okay, come on, Tushar. Ask your question.
Hello, good evening, sir. So, sir, my question is, we understand many auto OEMs are now transitioning from being just a company which manufactures and sell the car to a complete mobility service provider. And even I see Group Renault's vision towards the same line. So how do you see shared mobility in Indian context? Will it be a challenge for us, or it will be a smooth drive towards that?
There will be a challenge, but we have no option. We will go for shared mobility for sure. It's a matter of time, as I said. You need to have your ecosystem in place. And I'm sure that when government is putting up a policy or any other restrictions, they are creating infrastructure. And unfortunately, that's where we are lagging today. But as I said, we will do a leapfrogging. When we do leapfrogging, we cross all those things and go to one level, which we are in par with any developed nation. So shared mobility is the solution of the future, and we will go towards it. It's a matter of time. I cannot tell you how many years, but sure we will go there. And I'm sure that in next 10 to 15 years, if it happens, the RTOs giving license will stop. There will be no license required because we don't need it. So that's where we'll land up to.
Right. That answers my questions. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you all. Be safe and healthy, and you are the future of our country. So you have my email address, I hope. Should you have any more questions, do send me emails. I will reply.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you so much,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.